Hi, folks. This is Alan Jones with HiFi Buys. This is HiFi Chats number 18. And I want to welcome the team at Grado. I have Rich Grado and John Chen. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Real good.
Well, good. It was nice chatting just a minute here before we got started. But I want to ask everybody, if you will, please to like and subscribe on the channel up there. You'll see an area on your screen to do so. And also, if you will, go to hifibuys.com and sign up for our newsletter. You'll find we get a lot of good information through there and keep you abreast as to what we're doing. We do a HiFi Chats every week or every Friday at 2 o'clock. We've had a couple of exceptions. One was when I went to the beach, which was surreal to get away, but don't mind saying. And let's all remember, let's just be kind to everybody out there and respectful of each other's space. And also during this time, we will be also some of the music that might get talked about will be on the HiFi Chats playlist, and Crystal in the background will be providing a link to that as well. Also, any questions that you have, Crystal will have again a place where you can ask that question, and we would love all your questions, and we'll probably handle them at the end. You'll find we're pretty thorough, so we'll probably answer some of the questions as we go through this. But anyway, we're going to learn a little bit about these guys personally, and then we're going to learn something about how they got into the business, mentors, things along that lines, and then as well some of the wonderful products that they've been building. I personally have been carrying and selling Grado for 24 years. They've been an amazing manufacturer for us, just wonderful to take care of any problems that we have, which have been very few. I always tell everybody I work in electronics. It's not a perfect world. We're going to have problems, but when we have them, it's kind of shows who we are. So I, again, appreciate the way you all have handled yourself. So Rich, John, y'all ready to go?
Anytime you
Ready
are.
here.
All right. Very good. So getting to know you guys. Family and where you grew up. Rich, you want to take that?
I guess with the last name Grado, I'll start. I grew up in Brooklyn, just right around the corner from where the offices are. We just sold the house. My parents had passed away a few years ago, but we had that house. I believe my parents bought it in 42 and probably sold it in 2016. So married, daughter, wife, dogs, one of them laying behind me here. You know, loving life. My brother John is the owner and president of Grado, and we go from there.
Awesome. Fantastic. John, you want to?
I'm native of New Jersey. I've been here since I was 5 years old after my parents finished up their graduate work in St. Louis, Missouri, and born, educated here, and got into knowing the Grado family since 1980.
Wow.
So I've been with the who we call Uncle Joe, and I've known John since the early 90s, and actually just Uncle Joe gave me a great opportunity of representing the company starting in 1980 when I started my rep firm. So I've had a great opportunity to be with the family for the past 40 years.
Well, that's fantastic. I was born in Morristown. And,
so you're very close to me. I'm here in Somerville, so it's a hop, skip, and a jump. 30 minutes right up now 287. I don't know when last time you were back, but all these roads have appeared.
I was 3.
So it was about 25 years ago.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. We're done with this. It's time. Thank you, guys. Oh my gosh. All right. So tell us a little bit about some hobbies. John, you want to tell us?
Collect vinyl. I love listening to classical music. In fact, I found something recently. I'll show you. It was kind of rare to find it. I don't know if you can see it, but it's the French Suite played on a clavichord.
Oh my gosh.
So found it was $6 special. So I lucked out, and it's a very interesting interpretation versus anything that you hear on a piano or a harpsichord. So the clavichord was a very early instrument on, and it gives you a very interesting perspective of how music was played then and then how it evolved to modern day. And of course, probably the greatest Bach interpreter of on the piano, Glenn Gould. And he's a hero of mine. And that's probably my biggest hobby right now is trying to find this kind of vinyl and, trying to find the perspectives on, interesting piano interpretations.
Yeah, it's something I miss is actually getting out to the vinyl shops. We've got a lot here in Atlanta and a couple of them very close to me. And I miss being able to do that as freely as I did before, but that'll come back. So
Yes.
Anyway, great find. Rich, you want to share hobbies with us?
I'm into anything that's fun. My latest thing has been getting a little more into vinyl, but I like going out. I like socializing, being with my friends, doing things with my family, traveling, getting out in my car and going for a nice long ride and enjoying myself.
Fantastic. I love your VPI. I love your VPI HW40 back there. Beautiful.
Yeah, I snuck that out last week. I had lunch with Matt and Harry, and when they weren't looking, I ran it out the door.
Under that big raincoat of yours.
They might know about it now.
Yeah, I've seen a couple pictures about it.
I like the Parasound phono stage too. That's very nice.
I have John gives me all the advice on what to buy.
I have one too. We both have JC3s.
Y'all get on Zoom calls or just talk to each other?
We talk to each other mostly, and text constantly.
Way too much.
Between John, Rich, and me, we're I don't think there's ever a period of time from literally 6 o'clock in the morning to literally 10 o'clock at night that we're not collaborating.
Yep,
that's awesome. That's really great. So life experiences, Rich. What do you think? Things that have had impact on who you are?
Well, probably the earliest thing would be my first job at Grado. And I was 11, 12 years old, those little kits in the cartridge, the little screw kits.
Yeah.
I got the job of doing them as piecework. And we probably needed 10, 15,000 a week. I couldn't make them. So I got paid and I paid all my friends and I made a little money. So at 11 years old, I started my first business, and that went on to, I've probably had 7, 8 different businesses over the years. And I'm always looking for things to do and expand that way.
That's awesome. What a very creative thing to do at 11 or 12 and get all your friends involved. And man, that's shipping a ton of carts.
Yep.
Awesome. John, you want to share?
Well, I think the greatest influences, and the greatest things that I had was my parents. They are the epitome of the great American dream. They came here as students. And unfortunately, what happened, or fortunately, that they could not go back to China due to the communist takeover. And so from that standpoint, they stayed here. They raised a family. My father was a quasi-electrical engineer, more of a chemical engineer, and he had a number of patents. In fact, he contributed to the defense of the United States. He has a patent on the triggering system for Minuteman missile systems.
Wow.
So if you had to launch, a Minuteman, he designed the triggering system. And his greatest hobby was listening to music, because my mother studied Western opera as a young girl in China at the Shanghai Conservatory. And music was always playing in the house. And one of the first things that when we became of age, myself and my siblings, and we all went to the Juilliard School of Music.
Wow.
And from there, it just developed more into music. And my father was a HiFi nut of the first degree. I remember the electro voice patricians that we had in the house.
Yes.
So, so it goes way back. And what sort of really got me started was I had a very good friend who married a gal by the name of June Morantz. And she introduced me to Saul, and he became my mentor. And then Saul introduced me to Joe Grado, And from there, I got introduced to Sid Smith, John Dahlquist, uh, Bill Johnson, and it just, it just blossomed from there. So I was very, very fortunate, and got plugged into that whole cast of characters, and they were characters, and they all had amazing stories behind them and great experiences, and I think that just sort of shaped me and put me on a path, and this is where I am today.
What an amazing background. And, I agree with you. I think the people in this industry, it's there's just so much passion. And I think it just creates so many great things. And what an awesome time for you to be able to grow up young and have all that music around you. And, and really the scholastic part of it is pretty amazing as well, because, you're getting taught the right things in the right ways. And I think that's really great.
Saul was a true gentleman. Joe was a true gentleman, and just a phenomenal innovator. His mind was always going about, how can I improve this? How can I make this? So, and he was not shy about telling you how he did it.
And he did it best.
Well, if you
always.
Well, if you do your homework, it's so I was going to ask how you got into this business, and I think you kind of just answered that for me, John. And and at the same thing, Rich, we kind of probably know how you got into it too, since we talked about 11 years old. But you got anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I got into it at 11, and I worked there through school, but I left. I mean, my brother and I aren't just brothers; we're best friends, and John and my brother John are quite a bit older than me. I tease him about it all the time. So
John and my other brother John.
I left and wound up starting it. I bought a delicatessen. I ran a trading desk on Wall Street, had a marketing company, started an entertainment company, because one of my brother's best friends and my best friends is Mark Rivera, who plays saxophone with Billy Joel. And so we turned that into an entertainment company, and we were traveling around the world doing shows, and we did that. And even when I wasn't at Grado day to day, I was always somewhat involved, and my brother and I would talk 10 times a day about all different things. And then probably about 9 or 10 years ago, I started getting more involved again. And that's where we are today.
Awesome. I bet all that gave you a great background for you to be where you sit right now too.
Yeah.
So that's really awesome. Great backgrounds, guys. Love it. So tell us about a particular piece of music that just moves you, and why, and how did you find it?
Go ahead, John. I got to think about it. I probably can't remember the music and why it moved me.
Again, because of my training and my background, it was I was probably around 10, 11 years old. I can't exactly remember, but it was probably a huge thing at the time when Van Cliburn, a very famous American pianist, won the Tchaikovsky competition. And I've learned so many different things about the history of that. But it was, when the recordings came out with the Russian orchestra, it was we finally call it the RAC 2, the Rachmaninoff No. 2 piano concerto. Mm-hmm. And I must have like 20 different versions of that on vinyl and CD, played by different pianists over the time. But I still go back to the Van Cliburn. And he was such a legend at Juilliard, and he studied with Madame Levine, and it was a great American triumph to see that. As the story goes, the Russian jury who was judging this contest, and they were trying to figure out a way to go to Nikita Khrushchev, say, how do we tell Nikita Khrushchev that this guy was the winner? So they beat around the bush, and Khrushchev said, was he the best? And the judges says yes, and Khrushchev says, give him the prize. So from that and right after that, when he went on his American victory tour, I was 11, 12 years old. My mother was able to get tickets to a concert in Newark, New Jersey, where I saw his recital, and she drugged me backstage, and I got to meet this tall American pianist with huge hands. I mean, you he could reach twelfths by, just stretching his hand out and play a 12th. And then he started questioning me and says, well, I studied with, Madame Rafe. Oh, he goes, you studied with Madame Rafe? Yes, I know her very well. And he just filled me full of confidence and made me want to go back home and practice more.
What an awesome story. That's awesome. All right, Rich?
I can't say there's anything. I'm almost embarrassed to say I've been born into music.
Yes.
So I've been between my uncle and my father singing opera, and what my family does, and my brothers being older, there was always music on. It was, between Mark and I've met so many other people, it's just always been part of my life. So there's not often a time I don't have music on. I like to listen to everything, but there's no one thing in particular that stands out to me. My first concert, going to see Queen at 14 years old,
There you go.
I'll never forget what I remember of it, at least. But, but yeah, I've always been surrounded by it. So it's almost like it's just there.
What's funny is my parents were into music, but not so much to the degree of a stereo and all that kind of thing. But they were into music. But it was, I was in my actually very early 20s. I was probably 21, 22 years old, and walked into a hi-fi store and heard my first really, really amazing stereo system, and just went, oh my God, and worked for that store 2 days later. And it was just pretty much over at that point. So anyway, I remember the song and all that kind of thing. Most people here have heard it already, so I'll leave that alone. But so tell me a little bit about, share a little bit about who your mentors in life have been. Or are.
I'll really say in this business, my brother. I mean, again, he was the one when I was growing up, he was at Grado already and kind of running the operations. And as the little brother who was hanging on his leg, he figured he'd give me something to do and let me get involved. So I started working there and did more and more. And we've always been close. Again, he's got a few years on me. So it was almost like not quite old enough to be a father, but a much older brother. So, he took me around, and, we've stayed close throughout. And again, I've always been part of him. We've always talked about the family business and what's going on in Grado, and worked together on it, even if I wasn't locked into Grado and was off doing some other things.
Right. Family
And
interest.
it was always my uncle. I mean, my uncle, to not have him as a mentor in this industry, as somebody who grew up as his nephew, I don't want to push other people to love my uncle, but he could tell you how great he was, better than anybody in the world. So, and
Well,
he didn't often.
Well,
That's
what
an
I love,
understatement, Rich.
what I love is even while you were out doing other things, you were still involved with your brother, and I'm just so glad y'all are so close. That's really, really pretty awesome for the
I
both
am
of you,
too.
I'm sure. That's great, John.
Again, as I mentioned, my dad, and
Yes.
of course the real start with Saul and that interesting cast of characters. I mean, I got to meet Mitch Cotter and Dick Sequeira, Sid Smith, and then it just led one after the other. It's the audio, cast of characters, audio Hall of Fame, the usual suspects, especially within this, tri-state area, in terms of even the dealers, Leonard Radio, Harvey Radio, Grand Central Radio. I dealt with all those people. It was really a tremendous hub in time. And even at one time, I think my dad tried to buy Bozak with Newt Channon
Wow.
many years ago. So Newt Channon is a name that people don't know about, but those who do and have some history with it, he was the owner and founder of Adcom, and that was an American company that made some great amplifiers and audio equipment, and then subsequently did a deal with Kef, and his son Alec, is still in the business.
Wow.
So that's where I come from, and those are my mentors.
Well, that's fantastic. Y'all have a lot of history behind both of you. I think that's really awesome. And that history teaches us things. And, we're getting ready to kind of get a little bit into some of the cultural stuff. And I've always been a big believer that culture is what creates products, not products creating culture. And but if I could, I'd like to ask the folks that are out there watching, please to like and subscribe to the channel. You'll see the place out there to do so. Also, if you don't mind going to hifibuys.com and sign up for our newsletter so that you can stay in touch with what we're doing. We're a pretty active group down here, so would love to end up having you stay in touch with us. And let's also remember to be kind to each other out there and give each other the space that's necessary at this time, and we'll get through this thing soon. And also the music that's been mentioned, we'll be adding to HiFi Chat's playlist. So Chris will show you a link out there. And so anyway, as we carry on, so tell us a little bit about what are the main reasons that Grado Labs is who they are, not what they are.
I can
You like
give you a little
that?
background.
Go ahead.
I'll start from the outside perspective rather than the inside perspective, because Rich is a Grado. But knowing the history of the family, a lot of the culture was started with the founder Joe Grado, and I think he instilled a great deal of his enthusiasm, his energy, and his passion for music. Again, he was an opera singer. He loved to sing the role of Otello, and he really brought forth to the company a way of looking at music and listening to music and making sure that we were faithful to that recorded event, because he was a very serious amateur recordist. And from there, a lot of things did happen. And also from the standpoint that, he was so involved with the other godfathers of the audio industry, Saul Morantz, all these guys, that they really set the baseline for what we really call hi-fi. It's high fidelity. I think it really started with these guys, and they were all, to a single man, focused on bringing that music into our living rooms, because now we had this kind of opportunity for a greater audience to have music in our listening room. Because many years ago, the only way you could have music is if you were a baron or a Rothschild or something like that, and you would hire a quartet, or you would hire a pianist to come in. The salon music of Frederick Chopin, Franz Liszt, that was done in a salon. Normal people couldn't afford to see this stuff. But now the advent of recording and the LP all brought forth, this groundswell, and they were at the right place at the right time. And I think that they were just tremendous resource for giving us, all of us, a passion for continuing what we're doing. We all owe a great deal to these men who just loved music and trying to figure out a way, how do we, put it in a electronic piece of gear and find the speakers and do all this to make it sound like the performance.
Well, I think what's amazing, you go back to the 40s where you had like Frank McIntosh, David Bogan, these other guys and so on. And I just, I've got a DO30 from Bogan. It's probably my favorite looking little amplifier. That's it's just a little hammer plate deal and still has its gold lion tubes in it. And Anyway, it's pretty neat. I've got a Marantz 7 and 8 here, sitting here in my office as well. And I just, Saul and a lot of those other guys I've heard an awful lot about, but never had the pleasure of meeting. And
indulge me 1 minute. I'll show you something.
Okay. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. He's going through his closet of another.
Yeah, he's going to roll out the cart. Look at that.
It's an Ampex.
Oh, wow. Yep.
It's a tube preamp mixer used on probably a Ampex 350-2. And this was my dad's. And again, he loved recording. And this kind of equipment really, brought forth through, what we're doing today.
Yep. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh my gosh. Rich, you want to,
I'll take it a little more to the family side. I mean,
okay.
I don't want to stereotype here, but John brought up the word Godfather. We're an Italian family.
Hey, you guys.
From Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah. Forget about it.
What went into it all was my grandparents, Joe's parents, they were immigrants from Italy. We were a close Italian family. Everybody was close and stuck together and worked together and cared. And when I look back again, I kind of took it for granted. There's a lot of creativity in the family. My uncle was one to tinker and play with things. There was a lot of music. Another uncle of mine was in the Air Force, was a career Air Force guy who played in the Air Force band and traveled the world playing. My father was an artist, so he was always creating. And everybody kind of worked together, and we were never satisfied with anything, I guess. My father was always trying to make the painting a little better. My uncle was always trying to make, whether it was a cartridge, an amp, a camera, his car, he was always trying to make whatever it was a little better. And we've all been like that. And the work ethic, to this day, John says we can talk from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. That's Saturdays and Sundays. There's really no downtime. It's a way of life. And I think it's played into the product, and it's played into how we've done things. And again, everybody working together. Believe me, there are the fights on the inside, but on the outside, the family sticks together. You don't play with the family.
Well, the nice thing to know is that know that the family will be together, so you can have a fight, and no matter what, at the end, you're still together.
I just caught The Godfather the other day. Doesn't Michael Corleone say to Fredo, "You don't ever talk against the family"?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's awesome, guys. All right, so let's get into a little bit of history of Grado. I know y'all have a very rich and unique past, so share a little bit of the history of Grado with us.
I'll take this one. So, and a lot of this is before me, so I'm telling you the wives' tales that I've been told, probably somewhat
from the Godfather.
Yeah, somewhat tainted to make people look a little better than they actually were. But my uncle was a watchmaker. Was it Tiffany's he worked at, John?
Yes.
Was a watchmaker at Tiffany's, and was a
One of two in the country.
What's that?
One of two watchmakers, master watchmakers in the country.
Wow.
And but always had his passion for music, and that turned into, and correct me if I'm wrong here, John, the moving coil cartridge.
Yes, he got the patent on the stereo moving coil cartridge.
And my grandfather, the building we're in, my grandfather had bought in 1918, and that's where Grado Labs still is today. And there was a fruit store. Somebody had just sent me a picture from the 1940s of the fruit store. And we ran a little article a while ago. Former Apple store creates greatest headphones in the world. And the fruit store, thank God my uncle didn't want to sell apples and oranges. The fruit store became Grado Labs. And there are so many different family members who've been involved over the years and been part of it all. In the beginning, my father, who was an artist, was probably the art director and would work on the advertising. And again, as a family, everybody would pitch in and do what they could to help the family move forward. So my uncle was there probably until, well, he was always there as long as he was here in one way or another. But I want to say in about 1990, 91 is when my brother officially took over, although he had been running day-to-day operations for many years before that. And from there, it's just been onward and upward. Headphones, I want to say about 1993 is when Grado first came out with their headphones. My uncle, oh, I don't have them here. I gave them to be photographed. My uncle had a pair of his Joseph Grado signature headphones, probably mid to later 80s.
Yeah.
That is what led into Grado doing more and more with headphones. And I guess we got lucky. There was a time where, do we do microphones? Do we do headphones? And my brother made the wise or lucky decision to go with headphones. And that's the direction it moved forward with. And now his boys are getting involved. So not many businesses make it through 2 generations. We knock wood that we make it through 4 or 5.
That's absolutely amazing. Gosh. I mean, you think about those little decisions that basically weigh heavily on companies, and you don't realize what their impact is until you go through, needless to say, a nice amount of time. So I know I've certainly had mine here. I know y'all have had yours too.
What do they say? It's better to be lucky than good.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, you have to create your own luck.
Yep.
So you know,
The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah. Well, some people have better vision than others, and you know that a lot of times creates luck. So it's a great thing. So anyway, congrats. So how do you think the products have evolved as the world has evolved? And we're going to get into specific products here in a little bit. So I'm just kind of talking about how things in the world, whether it be technologies and things along that lines, have advanced the products, or how, you know, things have come along in that regard.
If I can jump in here, I think that actually in many respects that Grado Labs was ahead of the curve. Is just that the world is evolving into the equipment we make, and especially in the headphones. We were out there, in the mid '80s with high quality, high performance headphones, and continued to do that all through the '90s and early 2000s. And then I actually have to tip my hat to Beats for sort of blowing the doors open and making $300 headphones commonplace, and we rode the coattails of that. And so from that standpoint, Beats, and we have to hand our hats to Steve Jobs with the iPod. That really was the tipping point, the paradigm shift in terms of how people consume their music. It was not really, in some ways, the Sony Walkman a little bit, but once you had those, that downloadable file, and you could hold in the palm of your hand 1,000 songs, that really made a huge change. And I think it really changed everything in terms of, how the business had to conform to the vision of Steve Jobs. And in some ways, it's still conforming from the standpoint, I'm sure, Alan, that you see in your business, people are asking and starting to say, what about the streaming service? What about things like Qobuz and Tidal and things like that? We're big Qobuz supporters. In fact, right here, I have Qobuz on, and
Yep.
It's just phenomenal. I can't even remember. I have a huge CD library, and I find that the Qobuz is so much more convenient in terms of, let me pull that one out. And then it just sort of opens it up. Oh, I never saw that. Let me try that one. Let me try this.
Yep.
And then my wife's screaming at it, it's 2:00 in the morning. What are you doing down there? And I said, I'm listening to music. I'm finding all these new things, and which is phenomenal. And because of the streaming, functionalities and things like that, our headphone business is even growing even further. So, from the standpoint of personal audio, headphones is here to stay. It's also entrenched in a new generation, and they're discovering, headphones are discovering better quality. I'm sure, as you do, we, field phone calls every day. And it says, well, they don't sound that good. It says, what are you listening to? Do you have MP3s? And they go, what's an MP3? And then you go through the whole explanations. Well, you got FLAC, you got AAC, you got high res. And they go, oh, I got to look into that. So you open up a new world for them. So I think in many respects, the world is starting to, catch up to us, because we've always made headphones. And I go back to that statement where, Uncle Joe said, is faithful to that recorded event. And that gets you closer to the music and brings you into the music. And I think that's what makes Grado is that you put those headphones on and it just takes you into that music and takes you into different places that you've never been.
Absolutely. I remember when the iPod came out, and you were commenting about that. And, music wasn't mattering as much to people in a lot of ways during that time. And, I basically give a lot of credit to that, because my business is stronger because of the iPod. And not just because of headphones or anything along that lines. It just got people interested in listening to music again. And then they started. And then they started looking for better ways to go about it and so on. And I remember a customer coming and asked me, he said, this iPod came out. What are you going to do? I said, well, the same thing I've been doing. Just, I mean, they still need amps and speakers. I mean, and, so it was kind of interesting in that regard. And then obviously we added headphones and that kind of thing with you guys. And you were actually the only headphones I carried, I think, for probably 15 years. And you had such a great selection and always had such great care for us and that kind of thing. We, rarely ever had an issue, if any. And it was just, I don't know, a very nice relationship to be able to work with you guys. So, and I appreciate the little screws and nut packages. But
the current situation changed things a little too. You're stuck in your house with 3 or 4 people. You need a little isolation.
Well, there's
nothing like putting on a pair of headphones.
I was talking to some customers today, and he said, yeah, I've got a daughter that's 9 and a son that's 11. And I said, are they hating each other? He said, yeah, they need some socialization outside of each other. Oh my gosh. All right. So before we go into the product range, tell me a little bit about what sets Grado Labs apart from the crowded headphone and cartridge market today.
Rich, your turn.
It's my turn. What sets us apart? I think it's a little easier for us to do some things on the fly. I mean, you look at some of our limited editions, some of our ability to experiment, because we're smaller, it gives us a little more opportunity to go out and try some things. It also, with us being a little closer knit group, we work together. It isn't like, we're off on a tangent and we don't have time to sit and look at things. John, myself, my nephews, my brother John, there are too many Johns in this company. So we usually go by last names. We used to be able to sit and have breakfast or lunch and just talk about an idea. And we could turn that idea around into a reality a lot quicker than I think a lot of the other bigger companies can do. And especially with doing the different woods and finding the different advantages and what we hear different from the different woods and what we enjoy in them.
Yep. We're going.
Well, if I could make a small plug here to elaborate on what Rich just said, we do make these things in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what I've seen.
Again, something I take for granted.
Yeah, I would imagine at this point you probably do. I mean, it's been that way forever.
Forever. I owned my deli, and after I was 17 years old, I worked 16 hours a day, 365 days a year. My last day was a Sunday when I sold and got out because I couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much. My father woke me up at 7:30 on Monday morning and said, get around the corner and get to work. You're not getting a day off. So that's just what it was. You walked around the corner and you came home for lunch. It was just part of life.
Well, I think that's awesome. I'm curious how, like, when y'all have an idea and not everybody agrees, how you decide.
Oh, that's easy.
We always agree. We all agree all the time. Never any disagreements on anything.
I'm probably going to get somebody in trouble here. I'll stop. All right. If I can, I'd like to ask the folks out there, please like and subscribe. You'll see an area on your screen to do so. Also, if you will, go to hifibuys.com, sign up for our newsletter. We always have a lot going on, so I want to make sure that you're informed of it. Also, the music that was discussed by these guys also will be out there on a playlist about HiFi Chats playlist. And that's this one and the 17 HiFi Chats we've had before that were where music was mentioned. By the way, I know David Solomon loved the plug on the Qobuz thing there. So, but we use Tidal and Qobuz here, and I use them both at home as well. So anyway, let's see. Now we're going to start with a prestige line of headphones. So tell us, I mean, gosh, I feel like I mean, these are almost just like staples for us, 60s, 80s, 125s. Tell us a little bit about them.
It's our, if I can be a little bold here, is our gateway drugs to the world of high-end audio. People are introduced to the SR60 and the SR80, and I always hear from people, who have just bought them. We get the emails in, and they said that I've been listening for the past 2 days, and I cannot believe what I've been missing on other headphones. And so from that standpoint, it's sort of laying down the gauntlet to say that we know what we're doing. We know how to build headphones. We know how to be faithful to that recorded event, and we're going to get you closer to your music. And we can do it for $79 made here in the United States. So again, sort of being a little bold that, we do that. Again, $79, that's just like, I tell people, how much does it cost you to take a family of four to McDonald's these days? And for $79, and then I get people who have bought these things, back in the 90s, and they call up, can you fix these? I dropped them and I broke them, and these pair of headphones have been through college with me, through 5 girlfriends, a marriage, and it reminds me of all this music that you got to fix them for me. I said, no problem. For $35, we can fix your SR, 60s, and they're just like so appreciative of that service that we provide and that attachment to their headphones. I guess in many respects, the headphones and music have certain markers in our lives. And, a lot of these people started when they were, in their teens with SR60s, and they have progressed ever since. So we do make that range of SR60s, SR325s, which is in our prestige line. We make improvements because of driver gratings, materials, cables, cushions, to improve the performance as you go up the product line. So that's the essence of what our Prestige series offers.
That's one of the things I've always been very impressed with is, and it's kind of a prerequisite of anything that I carry in the store is as you go up or down the line, there has to be a difference. And what I love is y'all keep a very similar sonic signature as you go up the line, but you can tell that there's more there, and you're getting closer and closer to the real life event as you go up. So, we started.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
I'll add in. We did a first show in many years, about a year ago. We did the Can Jam show in California, and it was amazing to me, as John said, how many people came in to see us. He mentioned how it was like their gateway drug to music when they bought their SR60 or SR80. Back in the 90s, 25 years ago, people were bringing in their old headphones, to show us things that I forgot they looked like that back then, especially like an RS1 with the little wood button. But
yep. We have a music school in town that has a couple of classes. So basically all of them buy SR80s or above, and they recommend us to come get them. And so anyway, it's been a relationship we've had for several years. And at the start of a school year, we always get this mad rush and go, oh, you're with. But we have a headphone bar set up down here, and we started the SR80s on that. And shall we say, in one of my favorite headphones, which we're going to get into in here in just a second, is in the reference series, and that's the RS2s. I just think dollar for dollar, one of the best values in headphones that I know of. But one of the experiences that we had when the Beats came out was that people would walk in with their Beats, and we'd put those Grado SR80s on their head, and they go, And you're talking about a $300 to $100 pair of headphones. So anyway, but can we talk a little bit about the reference series, the RS1Es and the 2Es?
go ahead, John. I'm leaving this stuff to you.
Okay.
The technical stuff.
This is, the RS1 and the RS2 have their heritage based on an epiphany that John Grado had, back in the early 90s. And he said, after, the development of the Prestige series using, the polycarbonate, injected molded, products, he said, well, why hasn't anybody tried wood? So we have a full machine shop in the building. So he started grinding away with the CNC machines and things like that, and tried all kinds of different woods, and came up with the RS1 using African mahogany. And the one thing that we've learned over these years is that the materials do make a difference in the sonic signature, and that especially the African mahogany really made a nice difference in terms of that presentation of preserving harmonics and preserving dynamics, preserving transparency and resolution, the microdynamics and the minute information that you get for spatial cues. So we were able to develop two products out of that, the RS1, which uses a 50 millimeter driver, and the RS2, which uses a 44 millimeter driver, and again matched pairs. And you'll see if you compare the two that the RS1 is a little bigger sounding, more dynamic, better resolution, all nice things with good material behind it. So and we find that the RS1 has been a big favorite among our music producers that we know. We have a big contingency down in Nashville that call me up, just about once a week, say we need another headphones, we need headphones, and a lot of stuff that's being produced out of there use RS1s, and a lot of them, use a lot of producers, that we know.
We've had complaints when they use an RS1 after they produce the album.
Sure.
They want to go back and redo it.
I can see that. Why didn't I know this before I went there? Yeah. Awesome. So one thing y'all have been real famous on and very tunnel visioned on, which I like, because I think the people have to have beliefs and they have to stand behind them and do what they believe in. And that is an open back headphones. You'll find a lot of companies are doing open back and closed back. You also have been very strongly in the camp of open back headphones. And tell us why that is.
Rich, I'll let you do
that. Our biggest concern is the quality of that sound. And I don't want to say we don't try different things all the time, but there's a concern of not being able to produce the same kind of sound we're known for in a closed back that we produce in our open backs. Yep. And I mean, we realize it's not expected to be quite the same, but we're not going to release a headphone until we're happy with the sound of it. And we feel that it deserves to have our name on it.
Yep. Well, when you restrict airflow, you restrict sound.
Right.
No doubt about it. So anyway, I again, just always love that y'all kind of stuck the hard line there, and I like it. And I realize we need to experiment, but physics is physics. And it's pretty tough to defy physics and still come through.
I'm pretty sure we're the first and maybe still the only ones who did, and John, I think you have them on.
I'm on.
Open back Bluetooth.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of people who say it just makes no sense, but there are a lot of other people who say they sound so much better, and I don't always need the total isolation that you get from the closed back.
Right, or you just turn them up.
Right. And you don't care you don't care if everybody else. That's not your problem.
Oh gosh. All right, so let's get into some of the bigger models of headphones. You have the Statement series, which is the GS 1000, 2000, and 3000Es. And one of the things I'd like you to tell us a little bit about, most all the headphones a few years back turned into the E versions. And what was that about?
The E versions were an extension of driver technology. The biggest difference that we had discovered after working, it was 3-4 years in terms of working with our drivers, that we come up with a formula that changed it from the I to the E, dome geometry, magnetic structure, so all of those little parameters do make a big difference. So if you are in the, camp where you've had a pair of I's and you do find a pair of E's, the one thing I want to make sure that we underscore that we did not change the voicing. So the character, the relationship in terms of the communication of the music stayed the same. What we did improve is lowered the distortion, made the bandwidth wider, and the dynamics were improved so that, the soft to loud passages could accelerate quicker and decelerate quicker. So all good things that came out of that technology. And we constantly strive to improve driver technology because there's the capability to, from the standpoint that material science is always constantly evolving. Though we have found that over the years in terms of research, we still like dynamic drivers. And in fact, we've always made the statements is that, people press us, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And then we say, well, if that's the case, don't you think that the world's best loudspeakers are still made with dynamic drivers? So from our standpoint, in terms of, looking at those technologies, there are many different ways to approach it. God, bless you if you find a way to do it. And you're still going to be able to listen to wonderful music. But, from our standpoint, we still have things that we can develop. And I think there are going to be more breakthroughs coming in terms of dynamic driver technology, always improving. So that's where we stand with, looking at the E drivers to the I drivers. Who knows, there's going to be, even more different drivers.
There'll be EI at that time, or IE.
Or XYZ.
I'll tell you, that's the biggest fight.
Yeah. You got the technology figured out. You just can't do the name.
You can't figure out a name.
Right, yeah. So
well, one thing that has come up again and again and again in all of these things is noise. And obviously through great driver technologies, reduction of ringing, the more pistonic we're able to get these drivers and that kind of thing, the less of that we get.
Yeah,
and
breakup modes. Yeah.
Yep, and that's true also in the amplifiers and things that are driving these things, as well as also in the recording process and things too. We're seeing a lot of these things as we go down the line, and everybody is refining and refining and refining, and it's just amazing to watch technology pulling this thing along and some very passionate minds driving it.
Yeah, but to that point, Alan, I think we have that technology, but there is still an art that's involved in terms of the aesthetics that we sort of blend all the pieces of the puzzle of the technology in terms of that recipe, even all the way back to the recorded event. And in my conversations, I really try to stress with people, please listen to the music. You're going to say, well, I hear this peak there, or I hear this there. And I say, were you at the recorded event? Do we know exactly what that producer did in terms of any equalization, compression, all kinds of stuff that they do on, a board and with Pro Tools that we really don't know. So maybe he deliberately wanted to have more sibilance in the recording, or he wanted to do this. So, take a step back, and take it in as, look at the forest, don't look at the trees, and you'll have a much better musical experience.
I kind of explain that to my customers in a little bit of a different way, but that's an awesome way to describe it about looking at the forest. I tell everybody I've always done things by feel. When I first got into this, it was about analyzing, this piece of gear versus this piece of gear, and wow, at a minute 22, this sounded amazing, but this didn't do quite as good, and that was just dumb. But what ended up happening over time is I realized that really, from a psychological standpoint, we tend to go out and shop in one way, and then we go home and listen in another.
Yeah.
And so we need to provide an environment, which we certainly do down here, to allow people to relax and get comfortable so that they can listen and not analyze. And it's kind of a lot of like this DSP stuff that's kind of getting overused out there. It's making a lot of stuff very analytical and making kind of stuff stick out that maybe isn't even really there.
But see, that's the new generation of recording engineers. They're all taught that in the universities now. They're teaching DSP recording techniques and things like that. Again, Pro Tools. If you talk to any of the great producers and you say Pro Tools, and they go, oh, they say, and you'll find a lot of producers these days and recording engineers going back to saying to that 2-inch tape on that Ampex or that Atari or all those different things, and says we're getting a much pure rendition of what we're hearing in the studio and what we're trying to communicate to you as the end to the person who consumes the music.
I just read a review the other day, and it was frustrating because in the review, and there was a thread that followed. They were arguing with themselves because they weren't happy when they analyzed it, but they didn't hear what they saw, and they liked the way it sounded, but they didn't like the charts. And I wanted, and I stay off, but I wanted to just say, put on the headphone and enjoy it. Stop looking at the chart, listen to the music.
What's funny is our brain even likes a little imperfection. I mean, it enjoys it. And I don't want to go too deep in that world. We'll wind up with a 9.5-hour discussion with
Right.
4,000 questions. All right. You guys, if you will, please, if you have any questions out there, we've got a few already. Please feel free to ask them. Obviously, we've got a couple of very intelligent people here to be able to handle it. And they've been in the company long enough, since 11 years of age. I think we can probably call that, what, 10, 15 years for you?
Yeah.
Right.
Me back.
We did not we didn't get into talking, John, about the GS 1000E, 2000E, and 3000E. From the RS 1s and 2s, what are you gaining in there?
You're gaining what I would call space. It's more a more realistic kind of space that's outside your head, perspective, stage. It's just that sound has to have a little space in order for it to develop. So with the larger cushions, the larger chamber, you get more dynamics. You get lower bass, you get higher highs, you get more focus in terms of the imaging. So all of these things play in, and we find that the different combinations of woods, especially from the African mahogany, again used in the GS 1000, to the beautiful Coca-Cola used in the GS 3000s. And the Coca-Cola is, that's probably one of my favorite headphones in our line is the GS 3000. That Coca-Cola just has an uncanny ability to just let the harmonics be pure and rich, and it just sings. And I have to give kudos to our friends at Martin Guitar. They had invited us to their factory in Nazareth 4 or 5 years ago, and they were thinking about doing a collaboration with us. And it's like when they showed us their Woodstock, John Gardner goes, "Whoa,
Yeah.
look at all this wood!" And so it's behind gates, locked gates.
I'm a wood turner, so when I see wood, I do the same thing. So I get it.
And then so after our visit, and it was just a wonderful visit and wonderful people, they sent John a stock of Coca-Cola to play with.
Wow.
And that's what created the GH2. So once we had that done, and we all went, wow, this is just, it's like, it was oozing of music, and it oozes of harmonics. It's just that when you're like, if you play a Martin guitar and you just hit the strings, and it just keeps going. It keeps going. And that's what we find with the Coca-Cola. And it's just a wonderful, organic kind of presentation that you just melt into. So we love it.
So a question for you in that regard, and I agree with you. The 3000s just seem to light up music. It's they're with all the different headphone amps, they actually show us the difference in the amps as well. And one of the things that I did not realize and learned in this process with having y'all on HiFi chats, y'all can build a set of headphones with balanced cables.
Yes, that is correct.
So anyway, I look forward to actually doing that. And how long does that take? And I should say in normal times, I realize y'all were, and one of the questions that came up is, how is manufacturing operation going during COVID-19? And hope everybody stays safe. That's from James T. James T, we appreciate the question. Yeah. But do you want to share with us a little bit about that?
Rich, you can do this one.
I mean, it really depends on how you catch us in production.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be done in a week. Sometimes we need a little more time. It's really we just have to break the normal production line path and go in and produce the headphone with the XLR cable.
A week's time is much quicker than I expected you to answer. So,
you know what, maybe I'm being a little too, because when I ask, maybe I get something a little.
Do you think? Oh my gosh. Have y'all found that the balanced cables with your headphones have really been a very nice transition on them for the
I think from a sales standpoint, it's been let's say a nice sampling. It's more for the enthusiasts. we as Grado do sort of have foots in different markets. You know, again, making a $79 headphone, we have a different appeal to different people. And,
Right.
you know, there are the luxury buyers who want a nice headphone and will be very happy with plugging it into their, you know, Marantz receiver that they bought, you know, 40 years ago.
Right.
So, you know, by far the 1/4-inch jack is still the standard, but there are more and more, you know, high quality balanced differential amplifiers out there with the 4-pin balance. And you can hear the difference. It's a nice difference. You know, it's more focused. It's got more dynamics, more punch. But I will caution people, don't buy cheap differential amplifiers.
Right.
You know, it's going to cost you money. It's like anything else. You play, you pay. Get a good differential amplifier. And I'm sure, Alan, you have a good assortment of the right differential amplifiers, because a bad differential amplifier, that's going to go up in smokes and take the headphones with it.
Yep.
And when you get an XLR cable, there's also an adapter for the 1/4-inch.
Yep.
Ah,
So you have
awesome.
both options.
Very good. Very good. And what is the upcharge on that? I don't have it right.
It's $170.
Okay. All right. Very
Yeah.
reasonable. Very reasonable. So let's so you have a statement series and a professional series where you get away from the wood series, and tell us a little about the difference and what you were trying to accomplish going from the statement to the professional series.
Well, with the professional series, I would say that, you know, now we're in a situation where you want to hear the tree from the forest. You know,
Okay.
so the alloy that we use allows the driver to really drill down into the nitty-gritty, get very granular, and some people really like that. Some people would rather have a GS3000, take a step back and want to hear the trees. But I have, you know, 2 headphones that I use as the GS3000 just for general relaxing, but the PS2000 is a phenomenal tool and lets me know what's going on with all kinds of different equipments, and allows me to compare what's going on with new generations of headphones that we're making. Are we doing it right? Because it really is a standard that we can say this thing really lets us know as a tool exactly what that recorded event exactly is going on.
Awesome. So they were used more for folks that enjoy a bit more of that sound, and also for folks that are on a mixing console or something along that lines to hear what's coming out of it.
Yes.
Okay. Very, very good. All right. So you also have 3 in-ear headphones, the GR8E, GR10E, and IGE3. I'm not going to tell you that I have any experience with these, but so please help me so that I can learn, and folks out there can learn as well.
Well, the IGEs are entry-level dynamic driver earbuds with a microphone in line with it. We took great pains in terms of voicing it so that it sounds like music. So at $99, it's a nice all-around headphone. We found that we were selling at a great rate during with COVID, because people wanted to work online and had something with a microphone with it, and they're very light and they're very compact and they're non-fatiguing in terms of the sound quality, very neutral. With the GR8 and GR10, those are a balanced armature earbuds. They're extremely linear. You know, I think with the GR10s, the differential between is plus or minus 0.05 dB tolerances. So they're a wonderful little earbud. Again, extremely accurate, very neutral sounding. One thing we like about them is that they're very tiny, and we deliberately did not use metal to build them, from the standpoint that if you're listening to these for a long period of time, and if you use metal in your earbud, that metal retains heat. And after a while, that body heat just heats those things up, and you want to pull them out of your ears because you get fatigued. It just gets warm. And, you know, I use GR8s and GR10s. GR10s have more bandwidth in the bass because they're ported, where the GR8s are not. They're wonderful travel companions for me. They sound wonderful, and they're light, delightful sounding, very accurate, lots of detail.
So do y'all, and this was not in the questionnaire, so excuse me if I surprise you here, do y'all manufacture your own diaphragms?
Yes.
Awesome.
On our, let me qualify that. On all our headphones, our drivers are made by us. On the GR8s, GR10s, and the Iggy's, those are built to our specifications. The GR8s, GR10s are made in Japan, and the IGEs are made in Hong Kong by close associates of ours.
Okay. They're tiny. I mean,
Yes.
my gosh, I couldn't imagine doing the work.
Yeah, no. We have no more room to do work at the factory. So
I don't know how the people do the cartridge work. I went to the Rega factory a few years ago, and they had us put together our own cartridge. It was like,
well, we have microscopes for that for the cartridge work at the factory in
do
Brooklyn.
they have the lenses in it that cover for the shaking when you're trying to put this thing together for the first time? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I still have that cartridge at home, the needle's sideways, and it's pretty crazy. But anyway, a lot of fun. So you have on a set of headphones, which is y'all's only venture into wireless. So tell us a little bit about how that came about.
It came about because it was a necessity. It's wireless is a big part of the market. It's a growing part of the market. So we decided to say we need to get into the wireless business. That said, we did it very differently from everybody else because these are open back wireless Bluetooth. These use the CSS Qualcomm chips. It's now in its the 5.0 version. Though I really want to sort of tell people out there that with Bluetooth, they get all hung up on 5.0, 4.2. This, 5.0 only gave you more speed for IoT, Internet of Things. So if you wanted to connect to your refrigerator, great, but in terms of the audio quality, 4.2, 5.0, people out there, don't get hung up on it. Most important thing to get hung up, how do they sound? So from that standpoint, put them on. If they sound good, you're okay. But don't get hung up on USB-C or mini C or whatever. It's about the audio quality. Is this that? And then they get hung up on SBC, AAC, aptX, LDAC, and things like that. Again, go back and listen to them, because in our test with our headphones, if you use SBC, it sounds better than our competitors with AAC and aptX. So baseline, it's a better sounding headphone. And then with all these other things, I have to tell you, Bluetooth is a compromise. You don't want wires, Bluetooth is the only way to go. But with all the processing that goes on between the receiver, the transmitter, the codecs, the decode this, code that, subchannel this, you're going to lose. So, you want great sound, wire yourself. It's just like, if you're on the internet, go Cat 5, plug your computer into Cat 5 and be done with it, because wireless is always going to be a compromise.
Yep.
So we decided to go open back, a good chipset with our drivers and a light form factor. So you can wear these things for hours, hours. They're very comfortable. They don't build up the heat in your ears because they use the foam cushions, and my voice sounds like my voice. So from that standpoint, I think we did a pretty good job. They're, competitively priced at $250. So it's like, I think we did a pretty good job with them.
Well, I think you have too, and I love the fact that you left them open back and didn't go against, again, what your beliefs are in that regard, and what you've proven is true. And I also tell folks, don't chase formats.
Yes.
It's the worst thing you ever do, and you drive yourself batty and have to go see a psychiatrist, and it'll cost you more than a set of headphones before you're done. Oh gosh. All right. So one thing I just wanted to, all the cushions are interchangeable, and I've had many people buy the bigger cushions to go on some of the smaller things.
Sure.
Some talk about the difference in sound of it, and of course it'll change the way that the headphones sit on your ears, so it definitely will change the sound a little. Some we find very much for the better, some we don't find so much difference in, some we find maybe not as good, but we normally lean towards the better sound seems to come from them. And it's also, they're just so darn comfortable because the headphones are light anyway, and it kind of spreads out the surface area that they fit on your head, and
Sure.
it just makes it so much easier for everybody to do that. So if you are not aware out there, maybe try some of the larger ear pads, and you'll be amazed how comfortable, again, those headphones could be. So one of the fun things here, I wanted each one of you individually, if you would, y'all have limited editions. Which one is your favorite? Rich?
Oh, it's easy for me, the GH2. Although it depends on what you're talking about. The GH2 is the Coca-Cola.
Yes.
So that Coca-Cola just opened our eyes up.
But is that a limited edition?
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay.
They're gone.
Okay. So
GH2 has been gone for 2 or 3 years. It kind of grew into the GS3000 using the Coca-Cola. But
Okay.
I mean, from a fun factor,
yeah,
I can't pass on these hemps.
I
was almost afraid of where John was going to go when he said we went to Martin Guitars and John saw these woods and needed to play with wood. I was curious what got him to play with the hemp, but leave that one alone.
Oh my gosh, the hemp stuff's pretty cool. I like the little James Taylor thing with the strings going across it too. I thought that was pretty neat. So anyway, it's good for y'all to have a little fun, get out there and get outside kind of that zone, if you know what I mean.
You ever see the Harley Davidson one?
I don't think I have, but
one, what was that? The tailpipe from a motorcycle, John?
No, it was the cylinder head from the piston head.
Right.
oh wow.
Only 2 pairs made.
Yeah, they weigh like 70 pounds each.
Yeah, they were heavy.
They are heavy.
Very expensive.
I can imagine. Well, how cool. All right. So we're going to get into cartridges here. I wanted to ask y'all, if you will, to like and subscribe to the to our YouTube channel up there. It helps us with the Google to be, fully upfront. It helps us with Google search engines and that kind of thing as well. And also makes us more important to them with the numbers and that kind of stuff. Also, if you will, go to hifibuys.com and sign up for our newsletter. And let's remember to be kind out there to each other and give the space that's necessary. And this again is Hi-Fi Chats number 18 with the team from Grado, where we have John, Chen, and Rich Grado. And again, I thank you guys so much for being here. We're going to get into cartridges. So it was actually the very first product I bought from you was a black, the very entry level. I know y'all have made a huge step up in the prestige models as of late. And what created the enormous difference between the previous cartridges and what you're doing today in the prestige line?
Well, this is a lot of secret sauce that goes into them right now.
And you're going to reveal all that to us now.
All I can say is that there are advances in material science and also just manufacturing techniques. So little things that we learned from the $12,000 epoch has traveled down the line into the black. And if you have a black that you can play with, it's wonderfully musical. It's very low in distortion. It's just a wonderful balance of everything that you would want on a phono cartridge for $80 that's made in the United States.
That's awesome.
I don't think there's anybody else making phono cartridges in the United States any longer.
I don't know of them, but there may be someone. I'm sure somebody will let us know. If y'all know anybody, let us know out there, okay?
Yeah.
We talked earlier about people having their 60s and 80s from back in the 90s on headphones. John, we get cartridges from the early 70s. Yeah. and they want a replacement stylus. They're not buying a new cartridge. They just want to replace the stylus.
Yeah, we even get some of the mono, the stereo moving coil people, who this is going back to the 50s now too. So we see a lot of this stuff, and We always, trying to encourage people, saying it's time to retire it. It doesn't owe you anything. We've made significant improvements over the years, and the current lineup, I think, is just super. They just sound fantastic. They perform fantastically. They're just great phono cartridges.
It is unbelievable the value we get out of a phono cartridge today at the reasonable bucks. I mean, it's just, when you think about, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, it's really just absolutely amazing what we're seeing out there. And John, you got me all choked up. I got a tickle in my throat from when you said the refrigerator comment with the things. I was sucking on some water. I'm still trying to get clear here, but
sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm gonna have to be careful with you next time and drink when you're not speaking. So as we move up the ladder, we get into the Timber series. And so tell us a little bit about that. And I know these are available in 1 millivolt and also 4.8 millivolt ranges. So we can get a high output version and a low output version.
That's if you have the appropriate electronics, we always recommend to you to get the low output ones. We find with the low output ones that you get greater speed, more transparency. The microdynamics are much better, so that when you hear certain cues in terms of space, those are the microdynamics. Those are the first order sounds that we hear that allow for what they call head response transfer functions. It's the differential between our ears that help us localize space, a thing in space. So that differential, it's what 20 milliseconds in terms of those differential, so the low outputs have that uncanny ability to do so. But not everyone's electronics can do that. There are lots of good phono stages. We like the Parasound JC3 Junior, the JC3. There's some other very interesting sub $1,000 phono stages that are very good, and some of the phono stages just in a basic receiver are very good. So from that standpoint, make sure you're appropriately matched. Make sure you're appropriately matched on your turntable. Have it set up properly with the proper alignment. We like the Stevenson alignment for our cartridges. Seem to work best. And once you get that dialed in, it will give you a lot of pleasure. It's very musical.
I have always been impressed with, and I started carrying I think Platinum and Sonata and Master. Yes. Gosh, I can't even count how long ago. But anyway, always been very, very impressed with them, and been very, very enjoyable cartridge at again a very reasonable price.
Yeah, well, we have made improvements to them, as recently as a year ago. So. Yep. We're constantly looking at the material science, and what probably made the biggest difference was about 4 or 5 years ago. We had to reinvest in coil winding machines. We actually wind our own coils in Brooklyn, and we found that the precision that we're getting with the new coil winding machines made an improvement in the performance of the cartridges.
That'd be neat. If I ever get up there, I want to see that. So I will tell you, I was out in Provo and at Wilson's factory, and they had bought the capacitor folks, and watching that machine, I mean, for a geek, it's like, woo! I mean, it was so neat.
You want to do that again?
I'll leave it alone, but that was really, really neat to watch that and realize that, how much advancements have been made, and here you're using this very archaic, and it's really not archaic, but it kind of is to that degree, but, pretty complex. And the way that goes together, and you don't really know what you're going to wind up with until you actually wind it and test it. So pretty wild stuff. Also in the effective phono stage, we carry Luxman here. We've been really impressed with the phono stages built into their integrateds and things along that lines. Really, really nice brand to hook a turntable directly into. They're very much an old school company, and
great pedigree.
Yeah, I love them. Now we're going to get into really the top end, and this is an area that y'all started to touch about how long ago?
This is about 3-4 years now for the Epoch and the Aeon.
Yes.
it really came about when John said, why are all these Japanese, $12,000, $15,000 phono cartridges getting all this notoriety? And I said, John, because they do, because they're expensive. And he says, well, I can do that. So I said, well, please do it. So he did it. And so we have the Epoch, which uses a very specialized Cocobolo body, sapphire cantilever. We like using regular elliptical diamonds. We're not a proponent of the micro lines or the Shibatas. I think I would position it from the standpoint that, yeah, those things dig really deep down into the grooves. And I think there's just a lot of noise down there. So why do you want to reproduce noise? So if you look at the reviews out there, and the one thing I remember with Harry Weisfeld, when we gave him one to evaluate, he came back to me. He said, man, this thing is quiet. And if you start to track all the reviews, every single reviewer will say, man, this thing is quiet. And I said, we don't believe in these micro lines and Shibatas and things. They may be good for certain things, so, I will never say that we won't use one, so from that standpoint, when we put the whole thing together with the sapphire cantilever, the elliptical, the gold wires, the treatment of the coils, the Cocobolo, we had something very, very special. And it is indeed a very, very special cartridge. And so I would say, the little brother, the Aeon, is also very, very special. It just uses a less expensive wood, and but it uses very similar chassis components as the Epoch does.
Y'all got to be so proud to build something that's at really the top level of what's going on out there within that category. And I think it's I don't know, it would just give me great pride to be able to do so and know that people are spending $12,000 or so on a cartridge and going home and getting every bit of it out of it. So that would be joy to me. So when I started this business, I had hoped to someday sell a $10,000 used pair of speakers, and now I'm selling $15,000 and $12,000.
There you go.
So it's kind of nuts. And actually, there's a question that came up a little bit in that regard as well, and we'll get there.
Sure.
So anyway, I know that y'all have I guess the patent on moving coil, and or at least invented that. And so are there other patents that y'all own that are relevant to this discussion?
Yeah, there are a couple of patents out there that were done, as part of our IP portfolio. A lot of things that we don't patent because they're process, it would be called a process patent. And if we sort of published it, everybody goes, oh, that's what they're doing. And so it's very easily knocked off. So there's a lot of IP, there's a lot of what John would call secret sauce, and a lot of things that we've learned over the years, especially with wood treatments and things like that, that we won't divulge. It's just part of the Grado portfolio of IP that will be handed down to a Grado family member and not published for general consumption.
So what's the youngest Grado family member at the factory now?
Matthew, 25.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And I would think that being in the family for so long and that kind of thing, that they bring ideas with them that they've been dreaming of as they kind of come on board and start to see things, and then they realize how intelligent the people are that are north of them, and time and experience on the job. I've always believed, pay attention to people that know more than you. And so anyway, I can imagine that situation going through, especially with the family. So pretty cool stuff. Hey, listen, we're pretty much towards the end here. I do want to ask everybody, if you will, please ask questions. We're getting ready to go through. We've got a few here. And also wanted to ask y'all, just in this crazy world as we're living in it right now, how have you had to adjust your workflow and things like that, besides being on a Zoom with me?
I mean, we've set the office up differently, just the social distancing and protecting people at their workstations, with plexiglass and things like that, masks and gloves where necessary, and and stuff like that, even some staggered times with in and out. So everybody isn't coming in or leaving at the same time.
That's understandable. We've had a bunch of people at home from work. We were actually able to stay open because we take care of home networks, but we had to close the showroom down for a bit, and that was, needless to say, I called it kind of cloping. We were closed but open, so it was kind of a I know my guys give me a hard time for that stupid word, and rightfully so, I guess. But all right, guys, this again is HiFi Chats number 18 with the team from Grado. We have Rich Grado and John Chen with us. We appreciate everybody being with us. We're going to get into the questions now. Are y'all ready for them?
We're try.
All right, we have Greg E here. I know everybody can't wait to hear the answer to this question. Will we ever see a high output version of the Statement 3? Can one be built on a one-off at a rational price?
Can't be done.
Okay.
There's only so much room in the chassis for the gold wire. It's a special size. It's, there's only so much room in the chassis. So once we hit that maximum size, that's the output that we get, and it can't be done.
Okay. Great answer, and I like that it's you saved yourself all kinds of emails. All right. Also, Greg E, thanks for the question. We got another one from Greg E as well. What equipment does the design team use to assess development of new cartridge models?
We use all kinds of equipment. The one thing is just that there's always kind of a constant. John Grado uses a microsecond turntable. He uses a Grado signature tone arm that was nicknamed the Brontosaurus that Uncle Joe had made many years ago.
Was that one of the wooden tone arms?
No.
Because I had one of those old wooden tone arms long time ago. I used to have about 45 or 50 old turntables, and I was going to kind of do a museum at one point, and now I have just a small museum at the store with a couple of turntables in it. But
we still get people asking to rebuild those arms. We do have a third party that can rebuild those tone arms, and it's kind of nice, nostalgic. We've seen people, use that tone arms on Thorin's TD 124s, and the prices of those things have gone through the roof.
I have one sitting right over here.
It's they go for $6,000 now, which is just kind of nuts. But that's okay. It's a great turntable, the idler, wheel and all that stuff, and they put the Grado wooden tone arm on it. So from that standpoint, going back to the standardizations, is that John has a system that he's used for a very, very long time. It doesn't really change, so we know exactly what we're listening to. And it's not the highest resolution system in the world, but it will tell you if there's differences, and if we know that's making a good difference, then we know we're in the right direction. I use a custom-built turntable with a 12-inch Jelco arm on it, so it's a mid-range arm. It's nothing fancy, so that's been in the system for quite some time, as well as the electronics that we use. John uses audio research equipment and the Grado speakers that he built many years ago. I still use Dahlquist DQ10s. You might see them back there,
Yep. Owned a few of them.
Yeah, that was my first company I represented, was Dahlquist. So wow. These are 40 plus years old, and they're a little modified. So from that standpoint, again, it's a reference. I know exactly what they can do, what they can't do. There are lots of better speakers out there in the world, but if I keep changing things, it's a moving target. I don't know what, am I changing the system or I'm changing the equipment I'm trying to evaluate and work with? To us, for your consumers, you go home and you take the recommendation of what Alan's telling you to buy it. From our standpoint, these are our tools. And I would never recommend for you to go out and buy a tool. For you want a music system. For us, these are tools. Even though we do listen to music on it, I can enjoy it. Rich has been in the process of going through a lot of equipment lately. A lot of toys.
I like toys.
That's all right. HW40, that's a nice toy.
Yeah.
I'm glad you stole that under your raincoat, or as it's
No, he just tricked Matt into putting it in his trunk of his car.
I'm trying to find who I can have lunch with next.
I'm emailing Matt now.
There you go.
All right, so we have let's see, Rubiera 58. Appreciate the question. He says, question for John. Curious what the audio pioneers he knew would think of the sound quality and prices of the Megabucks gear. Really interested in what those mostly New York-based pioneers would think of the industry today.
Oh, I think they would love it. You know, they were always pushing, come on, you know, some of the Marantz gear, you know, a Marantz 10B back in the day was the price of a small car.
Absolutely.
So, you know, that stuff, the 10B, of course, sunk the Marantz company, but 7Cs, you know, 8Bs, the 9s are you know, God, what you think, what, $30,000 a pair now for you find a used pair. Back then, KLH 9s were pricey. All the Macintosh gear. So it's not really new in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the inflated dollars, but it was really a passion. And so from that standpoint, people out there, you know, the music was the common denominator. And from that standpoint, the money really didn't mean anything. You know, it's just that I got a great music system at home, and some of these people who still have some of this stuff, you know, back the day, you know, old AR3As are what, $2,000-$3,000 now to find a pair of restored pairs. You know, all this great vintage equipment. Though that said, I think there's a lot of great new equipment that's much better. You know, I think it's great to have some of this vintage stuff. You know, in fact, Rich and I were talking about the vintage stuff the other day with somebody. That it's fun. It's a lot of stuff that you want to be a collector. But I'm sure that 90% of the stuff that you have on your showroom sounds better.
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, technology has moved along. Circuit boards, capacitors, you know, all of the things that are involved in our products have all moved along. We've also learned a lot more about resonances and how to make a cabinet, or as you do with, you know, wood on the headphones and then the cartridges as well. And, you know, even like you say, how you finish them and that kind of stuff matters. And it really is amazing that, you know, I always tell everybody there's an awful lot of good ways to do things, and it's really about execution. And, you know, and it's figuring out what is that proper execution. And in almost all cases, it takes, you know, I don't know how many different versions of something to come out with the right execution of an individual product. And then you think about the circuit board manufacturers or a volume control manufacturer doing those exact same things. And then you put all those little things together and you come up with this really large difference. And and I think it's pretty amazing. I'm a lover of old gear.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
I'm not far from a virtual encyclopedia from the 20s to present. And that's, I used to spend my time in the Orion Blue Book, and I just sat and just, you know, when I didn't have anything else to do, I'd sit and just study and study and study. And then I started buying a bunch of different stuff, and bought and sold out of my home for several years before having the store, and then did used gear only for the first couple of years, and did some pretty big numbers in just used gear. And it's what I tell everybody was my master's in audio since I GED 17. So, but it's always was just a wonderful experience to look back at that learning curve, and you know, the learning curve today is actually steeper than it was then, because again, the more I know, the more I realize I have so much to learn, and I'm a vivacious learner. I just love you know, grabbing hold of new ideas. And you know, the last 2 or 3 years for me has been about noise. And literally this stuff from Garth Pallet, Audio Quest, and HRS, and, you know, driver techniques and things like you were talking about with your the actual shape of the needle and that kind of thing. How much all that matters when you combine all that together. And
a little tip. Many things, a few things I learned many years ago. If you want to reduce noise in your system, the first thing you do, go to the wall socket and tighten up the connections from your Romex into that wall socket. Torque down that. Make sure you know what you're doing. I don't want you getting electrocuted now. You know, switch off. Make sure there's no 120 going to it. But if you have to replace that wall socket, replace it. But torque down those screws. Make sure they're nice and tight, because if you have a loose connection, there's a lot of noise there.
Yep. It's amazing all the different places. And, you know, it's just like, you know, y'all combine all those little things that you do to make one big difference. And we as system designers actually do that same thing when we're building systems. So
Yep.
all that combined comes into a pretty big deal. But Ruby Air 58, thank you very much for the question. Someone also stated Soundsmith is US made in Peekskill, New York. So I don't know that.
Yeah, we know Pete. We know
Yep.
Pete Letterman.
Yep. So let's see. And then we got let's see, from Greg E again. Grado invented moving coil, but no moving coil carts are in the lineup. Is there that big a gap in quality?
I believe there is, from the standpoint that one basic thing is that our generator is a little teeny little piece of high ferrous metal that is very, very low in moving mass. And and the comparison I made, if you got to move a coil, which is much more mass, it's going to be slower moving than the little teeny thing that we use as a generator. So that's one of the first things in terms of just transmitting that energy off the piece of vinyl. You know, that said, there are lots of good moving coils. You know, we think we have a great approach to our design. Joe did move away from moving coils many years ago because he said, there's a resonance in that moving coil I can't get rid of. And if you look and study moving coils and you take the raw data, they all have a kind of peak that they have to tame. If you go and set up a moving coil cartridge correctly, you got to use a lot of capacitance to tame that peak. And what's a capacitor? It's a high pass filter.
Yep.
So you're taming that peak with a capacitor. When we set up a cartridge, we tell people it got to go into 47K because I don't know, maybe somebody can help me because I've researched this for a long time and I can't find out why the RIAA came up with that number, 47 kiloohms as a standard loading impedance. So they put that number out there. So we designed the cartridge around the 47K.
Right, as opposed to 46K or
I don't know. Again, I spent hours looking, trying to find where that spec came from. But when you set up our cartridge, we always tell people no capacitance because we are linear by design.
Yep.
So if you put capacitance on our cartridge, you'll roll off the high end.
Very good. Very good. Great question, Greggy. Thank you very much for that. All right. Let's see. Rubiera 58. How do you recommend someone audition, compare cartridges when all the other equipment coming from the stylus is invariably different?
You got to take it. You got to bite the bullet, buy one, take it home, and listen to it in your system. We can never predict what's going to sound in your system or in your room.
Yep, because it's a combination of arms and all the rest of it too. So, yeah. It does make it very tough. Really good question and a great way to answer that because that is really the correct thing.
Yeah.
So
find a good dealer like Alan and he'll help you out.
Yep, absolutely. If you're trying to figure out where you want to go, I'm happy to help. Let's see. All right, so play with vinyl. Do all Grado wood cartridges, starting with the Sonata, use the same nude elliptical stylus?
Yes.
Okay, that was easy. There's your answer, play with vinyl. Thank you very much. All right, so Greg E., are you familiar with Frank Van Alstyne's mod to Grado carts?
Yes.
The Longhorn bar attached to the front. Your thoughts? I understand if you don't want to comment. I had one, tracked incredibly well.
Yeah, that was then, this is now, and that's why we made the wood cartridges, is that we have perimeter weighting around the wood cartridges. If you have an older turntable that you want to use with the Prestige series, those handlebars adds that mass to the system. And again, if you do the calculations with tone arm resonance, that little extra mass may bring up the optimal resonant frequency of the tone arm to, well, I think it's between 9 or 12 hertz for optimal resonance. So the handlebars, what Frank does, was very clever, but if you get yourself an Opus now for $275, it solves all those problems.
Fantastic. Greggy, great question. Thank you for answering that. And great that, again, a very, very proper answer. Listen, I want to thank Rich Grado and John Chen, the team at Grado, for joining us today. You guys have really been a lot of fun. Thank you very, very much. I know I've learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else out there has learned a lot as well. And I just, again, want to thank you for your time. It's very kind of you to share that with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Guys, this is Alan Jones with HiFi Buys. This has been HiFi Chats number 18. Thank you for joining us.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
We have to let this thing record just a few seconds or it'll cut
Sure.
it off. So. That was not too painful? Yes?
Oh, it's fun.
Okay.
I get to learn something too.
What'd you learn?
Oh, well, I just listened to John.